Hello friend, I want to tell you about the Ford Mondeo car. Building the Ford Mondeo. The good news is that the Ford Mondeo Mk4, while undergoing a number of modifications over the Mk3, remains a relatively simple car with no major frills. The steering system features electro-hydraulic power steering, and an electric parking brake was an option. In the Mk4 model, although the idea did not change, the entire chassis was basically modernized. New subframes were used, to which new suspension elements were attached. At the rear, a design was designed resembling the more successful one from its predecessor, the station wagon version. There are 4 wishbones for each wheel, and the shock absorber is mounted separately from the spring. At the front, we have powerful triangular wishbones, in which every rubber and pin can be replaced. In some copies, you can find adaptive shock absorbers. Engines in the Ford Mondeo Mk4. After the disastrous experiences with the TDDI and TDCI units of its predecessor, Ford in a sense admitted that it could not create a good diesel engine, and borrowed a design from the PSA concern, which we know as HDI. It is not entirely true that TDCI is the same as HDI, because the Ford units differ in terms of equipment. The base is common, of course. On the engine cover we will find the inscription, Duratorque, TDCI. The exception is the 1.8 TDCI. This is a Ford engine. Interestingly, the petrol engines also did not have pure Ford blood. The smallest 1.6 Ti VCT is a design developed together with Yamaha. 2.0 and 2.3 in turn with Mazda. 2.5T is an engine from Volvo. Only the newer EcoBoosts after the facelift are Ford's own design. Choosing an engine is quite difficult, because Ford served customers petrol engines with different concepts depending on the year. Diesels did not change that much, but choosing among 10 versions is not easy either. Therefore, to make it easier for you, I have prepared a separate guide on this topic below. A more detailed description of the faults and also the features of each engine can be found in the article above. However, they can be briefly characterized as follows. The petrol 1.6 Ti VCT is an engine with rather poor performance and a high failure rate. The engine could surprise with a sudden failure, but mainly people who do not care about servicing, e.g. fleet cars. Today, after a higher mileage, you should take care of the oil and cooling system, and nothing bad should happen. This is a fairly good unit for LPG and for short distances. Without a doubt, the optimal unit is still the old Type 2-liter, while the 1.6 Ti VCT practically loses its sense on the secondary market. Theoretically. It is true that it is a safer option than the 1.6 EcoBoost and cheaper to service, but with such modest power, it is better to choose the 2.0. Unfortunately, there are much fewer 2.0s after 2010, so if you are thinking about driving on LPG, it may turn out that the only sensible option is, in practice, the 1.6 Ti VCT. The petrol 1.6 EcoBoost is an alternative in terms of performance to the older 2.0 and 2.3. The engine is more complicated and, like the Ti VCT, sometimes surprises with a fault. Recommended for the city, for short distances, and for people who do not intend to drive much. It works great on long routes, where it can surprise with low fuel consumption and good dynamics. The Mondeo 1.6 EcoBoost is quite problematic to assess. Many drivers are satisfied, but mechanics know of cases of engine destruction, and in a relatively short time. In my opinion, it is worth buying such a version if it has already covered about 100,000 kilometers, and at the same time, not too much max. 150 to 180,000 kilometers. With a higher mileage, the increase in expenses related to service and repairs may be too high. Similarly to the naturally aspirated 1.6 Ti VCT, there are problems with cooling, which ends with a cylinder head or gasket failure. In addition, there are occasional turbocharger failures and a fairly expensive timing drive replacement. The petrol 2.0 Duratec is an optimal petrol unit in every respect. It gives decent performance, maintains moderation in fuel consumption, is durable, simple, cheap to repair, and easily available as a part in the event of a serious failure. LPG tolerates well, although you need to choose a good installation and tune it properly. The rarely encountered version marked as FlexiFuel is recommended for gas. The petrol 2.0 EcoBoost is a dynamic type of drive, which replaced the 5-cylinder 2.5 all engine after the facelift. It has the performance appropriate for the car and is much more economical, especially at low load. Theoretically, it is suitable for LPG, but it is better to give it up in the event of a serious failure. The engine needs a specialist, not a random mechanic. The 2.0 EcoBoost engine turned out to be durable and quite good. It is actually a design with similar problems as the 1.6 EcoBoost, but fewer of them. The reason is simple: lower load. The 2.0 EcoBoost engine fits the car perfectly and shows no signs of fatigue even after a mileage of 200,000 kilometers. Besides, there is no shortage of such examples. In the case of the Mondeo Mk4 facelift version, the choice is quite obvious. For cheap, economical driving, the best engine is the easily available 1.6 TI VCT and the even better but less common 2.0 Duratec. Both can be gas to good effect. If you drive short distances and don't intend to do much mileage, it's worth looking for the 1.6 EcoBoost. The 2.0 EcoBoost variant will be the best for dynamic driving. The choice of gearbox is less important than the 203 or 240 HP version itself. The only PowerShift automatic available since 2010 has been configured with this engine. This is a double-clutch gearbox, which is not bad, but of course requires careful servicing and sometimes expensive repairs. Petrol 2.3 Duratec twin design with 2.0 Duratec with slightly higher power but similar performance, because configured only with classic automatic. This is also fuel-hungry, but you have to think twice about installing LPG. The low availability of these units on the secondary market can result in large expenses when it is necessary to replace it. Petrol 2.5T, in practice the best engine in Mondeo Mk4, but it is fuel-hungry. However, its big advantage is the possibility of easy conversion to LPG. The performance of this engine is very good, and it beats the newer EcoBoost with its sound. The 1.6 TDCi diesel is the smallest diesel in the Mondeo, and is a common design with the extremely popular 1.6 HDI. Thanks to this, access to many parts is easy, and their prices are low. This is an engine for driving in the city and on short distances, although it works well on the road. It burns the least of all diesels, which makes up for relatively frequent failures. The smallest engine in the range is the 1.6 TDCi. Its huge popularity, good access to parts, their low prices, and also considerable durability can overshadow the biggest disadvantage, which is relatively frequent failures. Taking into account fuel costs, on average about 600 kilometers, and insurance, it is the most economical diesel in the Mondeo range overall. Again, a good choice for people who drive short distances, because it warms up faster than the longer ones. Diesel 1.8 TDCi, old Ford design, with added common rail fuel system, is known for numerous faults, but also great durability. For many users, a big advantage is the lack of DPF filter. The engine is good for the city, for short distances, but also tolerates heavy loads and neglect. And this is why failures happen. The cost of their removal is relatively low, and the engine characteristics are different than 1.6 TDCi. If you wanted to buy 1.6 and you like it, but found a nice 1.8, it is worth a drive. Diesel 2.0 TDCi is the most popular and optimal diesel in this model. The main difference between engines before and after the facelift is that the early ones had more faults, especially DPF, but they are quite cheap to fix. In newer ones they are already expensive, but occur less often. There are no such problems with DPF anymore. In addition, after the facelift, this diesel was combined only with the PowerShift automatic. Diesel 2.2 TDCi biturbo, the most powerful and most complicated diesel before the facelift. It has a double turbocharger system, which in the event of a failure can not only be significantly more expensive, but also more problematic for the mechanic when it comes to diagnosing the cause. In addition, the DPF filter is quite problematic, usually already removed. It is difficult to find a clear premise for this engine, apart from one: the desire to have a powerful diesel with an automatic. From the 2.0 TDCi engines, you can squeeze similar or even better performance than the factory 2.2. The 2.2 TDCi diesel is the most powerful diesel in the Mondeo and significantly improved compared to its predecessor. It now has only one turbo, a more durable DPF, and significantly better performance. Its main advantage is that it was combined with an automatic with a classic converter. 2.2 TDCi engine? Not necessarily for people looking for a powerful diesel, although of course for such people in particular. It is worth knowing that the Mondeo with diesel and a classic automatic with a converter is available only in this configuration regardless of the year. The 2-liter after the facelift was already combined with a double-clutch power shift. The 2.2 TDCi engine is often described as more expensive to repair, and that is true, but this comment applies to pre-facelift engines with a bi-turbo system. And strictly sticking to the definition, we are talking about series charging. In addition, in this version, the DPF filter is quite delicate, which is why it has been removed in many cars. Injectors are cheap to repair. The newer 2.2 TDCi engine is more complicated in terms of electronics, but less problematic. It has significantly more expensive parts, but they break down less often, and replacing one turbocharger costs less than two. Ultimately, it is a good offer for people who want both good performance and low fuel consumption. And in terms of dynamics, this engine can be treated as an alternative to the petrol 2.0 EcoBoost. What goes wrong with the Ford Mondeo? Closing the subject of the drive system, let's move on to the power-shift dual-clutch automatics. These transmissions are no worse than the popular DSGs in terms of speed, apart from their operation. They are already well developed, and their repairs are not a big challenge. Of course, a lot depends on the user and the way they are serviced. Well-maintained power shifts can withstand even more than DSGs, but they also show more minor faults. You don't have to worry about them, although the safest option with an automatic is still the 2.3 petrol. Manual transmissions work without any major problems. In diesel engines, the durability of dual-mass flywheels is average, with one exception. The dual-mass flywheel in the 1.8 TDCi is not durable, but this is mainly due to the characteristics of the unit, which has a large turbo lag. The advantage of this engine is that you can install a replacement with a single-mass flywheel without major negative consequences. In general, the advantage of diesels in Mondeo is the availability and decent prices of dual-mass flywheels. They are replaced together with the central clutch release bearing. It is worth knowing that in petrol engines, there are also dual-mass flywheels, except for 1.6 and 2.3. The Mondeo's electrics are a bit of a mess, corroding and causing short circuits in places. This includes the ESP and air conditioning systems. There are also problems with the onboard electronics. Sometimes the air conditioning controller stops working or works incorrectly. Problems also concern the window heating or Webasto, which was often ordered for diesels but sometimes does not work. Another sensitive area is the front headlights. The body's anti-corrosion protection has been significantly improved compared to its predecessor. Unfortunately, many people complain about corrosion, but this mainly concerns repaired models. The untouched sheet metal of the Mondeo is durable. Ford offered a 12-year warranty for this model, subject only to the condition of annual bodywork inspection at the authorized service center. The Mondeo Mk4 suspension is improved, more durable but unfortunately still not resistant to corrosion. The rear suspension mounting bolts in particular can corrode. There is a set of 4 wishbones per wheel, and although after approx. 100,000 kilometers something has to be done, the prices of parts, even original ones, are not scary. Even the so-called sweets are replaced. The front, although not particularly durable, is not excessively expensive either. In the most expensive versions, you could optionally order active shock absorbers. They are quite expensive, but very durable. They can be regenerated, although after 10 years it is recommended to replace them. For a similar amount of money, you can buy a pair of very good quality axle replacements, but without electronic regulation. Vibrations in the car while driving can be generated by steel rims installed as a replacement for aluminum rims or non-original alloy rims. Factory rims have special embossings near the wheel mounting bolt sockets. They are designed for washers on the studs, holding the brake disc to the hub. In most cases, it is enough to remove these washers for the vibrations to disappear. When replacing the front wheel bearing, you need a special ring for pressing the hub into the bearing. Quote, "The steering system shows play before 200,000 kilometers. The gearbox is to blame. It knocks and can also cause wheel vibrations. Whenever interfering with the running gear, it is necessary to check and adjust the geometry, because the car is quite sensitive to this. In the brake system, flexible hoses can quickly delaminate and swell. It is worth replacing them with a good Teflon substitute at the first major service. It is also good not to skimp on the quality of the front brake discs, because they also sometimes cause vibrations. The car has a lot of faults that result from Ford quality. For example, The front windows delaminate and leak, which allows water to get into the cabin. The dashboard elements can also be annoying, as they creak or are already quite worn in pre-facelift models. While this doesn't bother the Focus at all, it does in the Mondeo due to the car's class. Quote, to sum up, the Ford Mondeo Mk4 seems to be a failure-prone car because I have listed a lot of faults here. However, it should be remembered that this does not apply to every model. Moreover, the Mondeo is not a car in which failures that are significant or cause high costs occur. In general, the car is quite durable and cheap to service and repair. Para car Mk4. Thanks for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate my video. If you know of any problems with this car that I haven't mentioned, be sure to write about them in the comments.